Strange things were afoot in the skies of 1897. Strange lights, mysterious crafts, explosions, and much more. What were they? Who were they? Why were they here? Were they from Mars or the North Pole? Why were some of them naked? Is there a truth to any of this? Let's find out, possibly. Welcome to Bermuda Boys.
Wow. Okay. Bassy. I don't even know what to say to that one. Thanks, Peepus. Thanks once again for your wonderful contribution. And, yeah. So here we are. Back again for round 2. Our second UFO-related episode.
Yeah, Dirigibles, the sequel.
Yeah, a sequel. Maybe a prequel. We'll find out.
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I'm Jack.
And I'm Mike.
And we're the Bermuda Boys.
The boys from Bermuda.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with Bermuda, you know that. Quit perpetuating that lie. Only the first episode really had something to do with Bermuda. Maybe the second. I don't know. But you never know. We might go back to it again at some point in time.
You know, in my mind, I never leave the Bermuda Triangle.
That's what the Bermuda Triangle does.
Yeah.
You just get lost in it forever. Ooh.
For the rest of my life.
Yeah. And all of the beginning of it, too, apparently.
Yep.
But we're not talking about the Bermuda Triangle tonight, unless it just so happens to come up, which it's possible. It might, because we're still talking about
things get wacky.
They do get wacky. I mean, you were just saying that you were holding Mike in your hand, and right before we started the show, and I was like, I don't need to know that right now. But I guess you were talking about your microphone. But I mean, you being Mike, and yeah. Moving on.
I gotta be careful sometimes if I do a mic drop. If I have a mic drop moment, I might fall down.
Yeah, just don't do a Mike's pants drop. Mike pants drop, and we'll be all right. But yeah, we're talking about
promises.
Please do. We're talking about UFOs, our infamous UFO flap from the 1890s again today, because there's so much more that we need to cover on this that, frankly, I can't believe a lot of other shows out there really haven't. You don't hear about this. You don't see about this. Like, why? Why? But so we're going to talk about it again more today, and we're going to... I don't know, maybe come to a conclusion. We'll just have to find out. But we've been stoked about this for the past few weeks, ever since we did the last episode. And I know it's, again, been a little too long since our last episode came out. But you know what? Sue us. We're living our lives still here at the same time.
Please don't sue us. We're poor.
Yeah, I mean, if you are going to sue us, I mean, you have no grounds, for one. And two... I am not a lawyer, but I'll represent myself, and I'll just make a fool out of any judge. I won't. They'll probably lock me up forever. But just don't, please. But I know it's been a while, but we've been thinking about this the whole time. Trust me, we have. I've been looking up stuff on it and just reading about it in my spare time as best I can. And I know Mike he's super prepared this episode, but he usually is way more.
I actually had to work pretty hard at not going off down tangential rabbit holes, because it just exploded out into so many other related weird things in the sky phenomenon and like historical phenomenon. And so, yeah, I'm going to stick to what articles that I got tonight from the newspapers, and it's going to be great.
Yeah, we're going to stick to the rivers and streams that we're used to.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, I guess to recap a little bit, because it has been so long since the last episode, unless you just listened to it before you listen to this one, which, ideally, that's kind of the way to go. But if you listen to it when the episodes come out, sometimes there's almost a month in between them. So just to recap a little bit, we're talking about the what we like to call steampunk UFOs that happened before there were any sort of human-made aircraft in the late 1800s, specifically around about the time of 1897, I think, is when we really talked about it. And we did talk about one guy that came into contact with some very super light aliens that he could just pick up with one finger. Which, hey, more power to him. And we talked about a couple of other stories, and Mike brought up a crash in Michigan.
Which I was incorrect about. It was actually in Aurora, Texas, and I was absolutely unknowingly misinforming you guys.
Which is fine, because that actually brought me to a story in Michigan that actually did occur there in 1897, as well as part of this UFO flap, and it actually occurred in my hometown.
Ooh.
So that's pretty impressive. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, and we'll cover the Aurora crash a little bit as well. But as of right now, because, we didn't prepare this beforehand, and I'm just going to throw Mike under the bus, and I'm just going to throw it to him and see what he's got to go with.
All righty, cool. Well, my research and digging around through old PDFs of old newspapers, which was really fun, just searching on the keyword airship, I found so much cool stuff. But the first one I'm going to do is from April 15, 1897 in Appleton, Wisconsin. And this article is called "Pegasus is Its Name." A letter from an aerial wanderer. Chicago, April 15. All sorts of telegrams come here in regard to the alleged airship seen in the section of the country. But it seems to be impossible to get anything reliable in regard to it. It has been several weeks since the agitation started, but the reports did not begin to arrive in close order until the 5th of this month. Since then, they have come in every night. Some of the newspapers here declare it a nonsensical story. Yet the reports in most cases have come from reliable persons. Of course, the practical joker has come to the front, and in some cases, small balloons with lights attached have been sent up in various towns. But in the majority of cases, the persons who saw or thought they saw an object in the sky have treated the matter in a most serious manner. A dispatch just received from Appleton, Wisconsin, says that on Sunday night, many persons saw an airship pass over that city. On the farm of N.B. Clark, near there, a letter was picked up attached to an iron rod 18 inches long, sticking in the ground. All right, here we have what seems to be a quote from the letter. Letter from the airship. The letter, which was not signed, was as follows. Aboard the airship Pegasus, April 9, 1897. The problem of aerial navigation has been solved. The writers have spent the past month cruising about in the airship Pegasus and have demonstrated to their entire satisfaction that the ship is a thorough success. We have been able to attain a speed of 150 miles per hour and have risen to a height of 2,500 feet above sea level. The Pegasus was erected at a secluded point 10 miles from Lafayette, Tennessee, and the various parts of the machine were carried overland from Glasgow, Kentucky, to that point, being shipped from Chicago, Pittsburgh, and St. Louis. We have made regular trips of 3 days each from Lafayette to Yankton, and no harm has come to the Pegasus thus far. Within a month, our application for the patents for a parallel plane airship will be filled simultaneously at Washington and the European capitals. It is propelled by steam and is lighted by electricity and has a carrying power of 1,000 pounds. A telegram from, that's the end of the quotation. A telegram from Greensburg in Indiana says the skeptics of that city no longer doubt the reality of the airship since the machine was seen there last evening. The airship made its appearance about 6:30 and was seen by several hundred prominent persons. 156. Damn, that's hard to read. 156, I believe, prominent citizens of the city and county are willing to make sworn statements that they saw the strange machine. This article actually goes on for a few more paragraphs to tell about the Greenberg sighting and to quote one of the eyewitnesses who says that the ship usually goes about 10 miles an hour, but at one point they saw it take off or dash off at the tremendous speed of fully 150 miles an hour. So we have another mention of it being capable of very high speeds.
With their 1890s radar gun.
I know.
Pick that up.
So what do you think of that one so far? We've got not a direct interaction with the pilot, but there is a mysterious rod on the farm and a letter from the pilot.
Well, see, I don't know. Again, that comes back. It seemed almost credible to me that it could be human beings taking responsibility until the 150 miles per hour thing of their airship that is steam powered.
Yeah, we discussed how I still am firmly of the belief that you could not get a steam. You couldn't get a balloon at that point in time that would hold enough weight to carry a steam engine from that time period.
No. And to get up to a speed of 150 miles per hour, I mean, for one...
Oh, hell no, yeah.
How are they measuring that speed? Are they dropping, knotted rope out the back as they're flying and reading how many knots get pulled off the deck? They didn't have the type of ability to, I guess, maybe some trains had it, maybe.
Oh, hell no. No, trains weren't even going. They were like 35 miles an hour or something like that back then.
Yeah, but I mean, they had the ability to read the speed. They were having
discussions back in this time period about what would happen to the human body if it went like 55 miles an hour. Would the cells of the human body rip apart?
Now, yeah. Now, another part where they lost credibility to me was, obviously the steam-powered part. Because for one, okay, I can understand the electricity and coming off of the steam-powered, yeah. Okay, they had steamships at the time that ran generators that had electric lights on the steamships, like on the and on trains and whatnot at this time. So yeah, the technology was there. But then they go on to say that it has a lifting capacity of 1,000 pounds. Now I'm pretty sure that any steam engine at that point in time is going to weigh well over a metric ton. So
yeah. Plus all the water you're going to have to carry, plus all the coal or whatever kind of other crude fuel you're using to run the fire in the furnace,
Yeah, you got to be burning something.
Yeah.
It's not like it's Back to the Future Part 3 where they got this super dense awesome burning log that they can throw in that just, burns really hot.
Yeah.
And no, they didn't have that ability. They used wood or coal. So, and then not only that, the amount of water needed to carry, and we all know that a gallon of water weighs a good amount, like 7 or 8 pounds for a gallon of water, something like that. You're going to need a lot more than 1 gallon.
Yeah, and you think
just to
about
run
the
your
trains,
steamship.
like they're letting off, not only are they letting off the smoke from the coal burner, but they're also letting off all the steam that's going through there. They can't recycle the water back into their boiler. They have to refill at each train station. So this thing is not, I mean, it's getting lighter as it goes, I suppose, if it's actually running off of steam. But, yeah, I mean.
So, I mean, they almost had us. But, I mean, maybe a lot of people back then would have been more easily fooled because not a lot of people really understood engineering back then.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of people back then would have been fooled because remember, this is something that's like trying to introduce some sort of novelty, like something in the collective unconscious is going, you guys need to invent this air travel thing. It's on everybody's mind. In fact, I mean, I would already just coming at it from a purely skeptical side, my purely skeptical side, I would say this could have been a artist, a creative, anyone who's, got connections, strong connections to his own unconscious that wrote out this imaginative tale in the, the voice of an airship pilot with plausible details, basically a science fiction writer who tied this around a rebar post and stuck it on some hapless farmer's yard, whatever, stuck it in the ground in his yard, going, he'll find this, he'll tell the newspapers, this has been a flap of these, this will add to the thing. There is definitely no evidence whatsoever that this bar fell
None.
out of a passing airship and stuck into the ground. And you know what? Even if it did, let's pretend, let's leave my skeptical side a little bit and go into the land of this happened, okay? So you got an airship pilot flying around at 150 miles an hour. What the fuck business does he have throwing iron bars out of his ship? That's going to kill someone.
Right? And not only are you adding the speed of the ship, you're adding terminal velocity of gravity as well.
Especially when there's so many easier ways to communicate. Hey,
Yeah.
by the way, we have air travel now. Like, for example, saying to people, hey, by the way, we have air travel now. You don't need to put a cryptic note on a piece of rebar and chuck it over the side of your boat. Of your airship.
And honestly, that should have been the point where I said this is the least credible. Because, if you got yourself an airship and you spent this much time and you're shipping all this stuff around the country to build it, and it's all you know exactly where it comes from and everything.
Coming in from 3 different industrial cities at the time, by the way. So he's actually mentioning realistically industrialized
to me, it just
areas.
sounds like viral advertisement.
Yeah.
Which, but anyway, I'll touch more on that in a second. But what I was going to say is that why don't you just take it and park that son of a bitch right on the front lawn of the patent office and be like, look, here it is.
Yeah.
Instead of throwing out a cryptic note attached to a 18-inch long piece of steel that could have impaled somebody through the face. There's a lot of easier ways to do it. Hell, I'm pretty sure they had the telephone by that point, and he could have just called somebody.
This does mention telegraph. I don't know about telegram, but the article does mention that they got some of these messages by telegram.
Western Union, it's whatever they had at the time, snail mail would have worked just fine. You don't have to throw that shit out of your airplane unless, you can't touch the ground for some reason. Is the floor lava? I mean,
maybe it goes 150 miles an hour, but he's having trouble stopping it. So it just straight across
once that
the
shit
country.
gets going, it's going. It's
There's
still going to
no
this day.
stopping
That's
it.
why we haven't found it. It's well past Pluto by now, I would assume. He's
They
left
tried,
the firmament.
the first 5 messages they chucked out were in bottles, but of course at that velocity they just shattered and went went everywhere. So
Yeah,
like, well, we got to stick this note on something a little more durable.
They were afraid. They had stuck it to one of their dead crewmate and threw him out, but his body just disintegrated at such incredible speeds.
I know. All the cells just flew apart.
Atomized. But anyways, as I was also saying that it sounds like viral marketing to me, which as I don't know. Do you recall this? Because this was big news a couple of years ago, and like right in the height of COVID and everything like that, there was these steel, like polished monoliths that were showing up around the world, and still to this day, nobody knows who was putting them out there or why. But they just kind of showed up in random weird ass locations that didn't make any sense. And that kind of reminds me of this whole situation. When you brought up that there was some, artist-minded person out there, it kind of reminded me of this this flap of monoliths that were showing up around the world. And, it could be the same thing. One person probably put one of the monoliths out for some sort of art installation or something like that, and then it just immediately got covered and copied all over the place. So there's a good chance that this UFO flap, one person, could have just been one sighting that was legit, and the rest of these are just people that are just trying to capitalize on it. Because that's what people do. They like to make up stories. Yeah. Somebody else had hell, just go on TikTok. Somebody makes a funny video. 3 million other people copy that video to make it their own. That's what people do. They take other people's progress and whatnot, and they do it themselves.
Well,
that's what we're doing on this show. So,
Yeah, I would agree, and we already have it. So what was it? The first article in Fresno, California was in October of 1896, right?
Yeah, I think it was something like that.
Yeah.
It was late in the year.
Just here already in the beginning of 1897, that one was from April 15. We already have the fully fledged mythology being built. We have it goes at high speeds. We have the information about the pilots saying that they have patents. They're issuing patents for this. The pilots talking about building them kind of who was that guy? Captain Nemo style, where he gets all the parts shipped in from different areas and puts them together secretly. We've got all the elements of the myth coming together already this early in April 15 of 1897. However, it is still myth in some ways. It is still something that is in the unconscious. And so the next one I want to read is something that really showcases the unconscious psychodynamics going on, especially Jung's concept of the anima, which is the inner woman and psychopomp of the psyche, which often shows up to guide the psyche, guide the consciousness to some sort of realization or development in the person's life. So here is the story from April 19 in St. Louis Post-Dispatch. This one is called Golden-Haired Girl is in it. The airship discovered in southwest Missouri. What Hopkins says he saw. He is an elderly Christian gentleman, and his friends say he is perfectly reliable. In the mass of evidence which has reached the Post-Dispatch concerning the existence of an airship that is said to be floating over the Central West, the most astonishing is that furnished by Mr. W. H. Hopkins, General Traveling Agent for the Hartford Steam Boiler Inspection and Insurance Company. He's an insurance inspector, huh? Mr. Hopkins writes the Post-Dispatch that on Friday he saw the airship a few miles away from Springfield, Missouri. Not only did he see the craft, but he saw the aerial navigators and conversed with them. The letter is not a hoax. It is in Mr. Hopkins' handwriting, so those employed at the headquarters of the Hartford Company, 517 Security Building Avenue, Avere, which is like, I guess, assure they're assuring that that's actually his handwriting. So it looks like they checked in with his employers.
I wonder if that address still exists. I'm kind of curious.
It was also identified by his wife, who lives at, oh my God, they give her address, 5028 Minerva Avenue. Mr. Hopkins is 50 years of age and is well known in the West End. He is a prominent church member, and everybody spoken to vouches for his veracity. The letter is here given. And here is the letter in full to the editor of the Post-Dispatch. Till yesterday, I had supposed the numerous reports of the appearance of a mysterious airship in the different parts of the country, in many instances widely separated, at nearly the same hour, were but the result of very vivid imaginations. I thought the first report of an airship was started by some Munchausen of the press to gratify some mischievous whim and to see how many imaginative people would fall in line and claim, honestly of course, that they had seen it also. My impression was strengthened by my own experience a few days ago, when in Kansas City a friend and myself thought we saw a bright light in the heavens, which frequently disappeared and then reappeared again, but which we afterwards found was the evening star, which was intensely bright, but which was occasionally obscured by light clouds of steam which were not visible to us in the darkness. But after my adventure of yesterday, my doubts of the reality of the airship have been dispelled. I was wandering through hills east of Springfield, Missouri, and coming to the brow of a hill overlooking a small clearing in the valley a short distance below me, I saw a sight that rooted me to the spot with amazement for some time. I could not believe my eyes at first, and shook myself to see if I was not dreaming. There in the clearing rested a vessel similar in outline to the airship shown in the Post-Dispatch a few days ago, and said to have been taken in Illinois. As the sun shone upon it, the rays were reflected as from burnished aluminum. It rested upon 4 legs or supports, which raised it from the ground sufficiently to give room for 2 wheels like the propeller of a ship lying horizontally, one at the bow and the other at the stern. Another at the stern lying perpendicularly was evidently for the purpose of propelling the vessel ahead, while the other 2 raised the vessel. The vessel itself... Whoa! What's going on?
Uh-oh.
You got some music playing?
I did. Yeah, sorry. I set my tablet down on my my Rodecaster, and I guess it set off some of my preset shit that they got going on there. My bad. Anyway,
That was loud. It just suddenly like, whoa. Oh, shit. Okay, I'm about halfway through this, so let me go back where the other... while the other 2 raised the vessel. The vessel itself was about 20 feet long and 8 feet in diameter, and the propellers about 6 feet in diameter. Near the vessel was the most beautiful being I ever beheld. She was rather under medium size, but of the most exquisite form and features, such as would put to shame the forms as sculpted by the ancient Greeks. She was dressed in nature's garb, and her golden hair, wavy and glossy, hung to her waist, unconfined excepting by a band of glistening jewels that bound it back from her forehead. The jewels threw out rays of light as she moved her head. She was plucking the little flowers that were just blossoming from the sod with exclamations of delight and in a language I could not understand. Her voice was like low silvery bells, and her laughter rang out like their chimes. In one hand she carried a fan of curious design that she fanned herself vigorously with, though to me the air was not warm and I wore an overcoat. In the shade of the vessel lay a man of noble proportions and majestic countenance. His hair of dark
Goodness.
auburn fell to his shoulders in wavy masses, and his full beard of the same color, but lighter in shade, reached to his breast. He also was fanning himself with a curious fan, as if the heat oppressed him. As I looked with astonishment on the picture, I wondered if Adam and Eve had come to earth again, or was I dreaming? After gazing for a while, I moved forward, and the woman, hearing the rustle of leaves, looked around. A moment she stood looking at me with wonder and astonishment in her beautiful blue eyes. Then, with a shriek of fear, she rushed to the man, who sprang to his feet, threw his arm around her, and glared at me in a threatening manner. I stopped, and taking my handkerchief from my pocket, waved it in the air. A few minutes we stood, and I then spoke some words of apology for intruding. But he seemed not to understand, and replied in a threatening tone and words which I could not make out. I tried by signs to make him understand, and finally he left her, trembling and trying to hold him back, and came towards me. I extended my hand. He looked at it a moment, astonishment depicted in his dark brown eyes, and finally he extended his own hand and touched mine. I took his and carried it to my lips. I tried by signs to make them understand I meant no harm. Finally his face lighted up with pleasure, and he turned and spoke to the woman. She came hesitatingly forward, her form undulating with exquisite grace. I took her hand and kissed it fervently. The color rose to her cheeks, and she drew it hastily away. I asked them by signs where they came from, and it was difficult to make them understand. Finally, they seemed to do so, and smiling, they gazed upwards for a moment, as if looking for some particular point, and then pointed upwards, pronouncing a word which to my imagination sounded like Mars. I pointed to the ship and expressed my wonder in my countenance. He took me by the hand and led me towards it. In the side was a small door. I looked in. There was a luxurious couch covered with robes of most beautiful stuff and texture, such as I had never seen before. From the ceiling was suspended a curious ball, from which extended a strip of metal, which he struck to make it vibrate. Instantly the ball was illuminated with a soft white light, which lit up the whole interior. It was most beautifully decorated with scenes such as I had never seen before. At the stern was another large ball of metal, supported in a strong framework and connected to the shaft of the propeller at the stern, was similar mechanism attached to each propeller, and smaller balls attached to a point of metal that extended from each side of the vessel and from the prow. And connected to each ball was a thin strip of metal similar to the one attached to the lamp. He struck each one, and when they vibrated, the balls commenced to revolve with intense rapidity, and did not cease till he stopped them with a kind of brake. As they revolved, intense lights, stronger than any arc light I ever saw, shone out from the points at the sides and at the prow, but they were of different colors. The one at the prow was an intense white light. On one side was green and the other red. The two had been examining me with the greatest curiosity in the meantime. They felt of my clothing, looked at my gray hair with surprise, and examined my watch with the greatest wonder. Signs are poor medium to exchange ideas, and therefore we could express but little. I pointed to the balls attached to the propellers. He gave each of the strips of metal a rap, those attached to the propellers under the vessel first. The balls began to revolve rapidly, and I felt the vessel begin to rise. And I sprang out, and none too soon, for the vessel rose as lightly as a bird and shot away like an arrow, and in a few minutes was out of sight. The two stood laughing and waving their hands to me, she a vision of loveliness and he of manly vigor. Probably people will ask, as they did of the farmer in Iowa, "Where did you get your whiskey?" But I can say, if I ever drank liquor, I would go immediately and get some more of that whiskey. If you wish to learn anything more, particularly regarding my experience, my address is 517 Security Building, St. Louis, W.H. Hopkins.
All right. Okay, so
Wow.
one thing I really want to point out on this is I had a really hard time keeping a straight face and keeping my maturity during that entire penthouse letter from W.H. Hopkins there. Wow. I mean, they had a casting couch and everything. But,
Yeah.
I mean...
Very, very sexual, very, very...
very. This man is
mean,
depraved.
Go ahead.
But, I mean, the fact that he's putting his address out there, been like, you know what, you want to test me on this? This is where I live. Show up, motherfucker. You show
real.
up. You show up and I will talk to you about it. Shows a sense of credence to him that most people wouldn't have. That's like the equivalent of going on to a show like, I don't know, say like Coast to Coast, and telling them, you know what, if somebody wants to talk to me about this is my phone number. You can call me. You know, it'd be like the same equivalent. So that, I don't know. I don't drink whiskey anymore, but when I did, I never had an experience such as this. So I think he's good with that.
Whiskey doesn't make you hallucinate.
No. If anything, it made me feel invincible at times, but, you know, and a little argumentative and combative, but it never made me hallucinate, you know, frolicking women and a well-endowed man in a field. So, with a beard that rivaled God's.
Apparently so. Yeah, and they're butt-ass naked, but inside of their suspiciously phallic-looking ship, they have robes of every kind. But they're so like astonished at his clothes. Like, why would you wear? We have a ton of robes in there, and we could wear them, and we see that you're wearing clothes, but why would we wear them? This is so weird. What the fuck?
I like that they're suspiciously phallic ship. Yeah, when you were describing, and then the shaft extended down to the balls. It's like I had every intention just to stop you right there, but I was like, no, I want to see where this is going.
Yeah,
like, does it go around the balls and there's a little hole?
Vigorously multiple times. I mean,
I had very, very detailed descriptions. Extremely provocative wording.
Yeah.
Which is, to me, it screamed Dear Penthouse. It really did. So,
it's definitely recruiting this man's libidinal energy. And there's a naked lady. It's very Garden of Eden-esque. You know, we've got, this is Freud and Jung written all over it.
Mm-hmm. So this man either really just wanted to put his kinks out there for everybody, or he actually did see something. And once again, they go back to Mars. They're pointing again to Mars, which we got to remember at this time, if people thought there was a habitable planet anywhere in the solar system, it was always Mars.
Yeah.
So they just assumed that all of these people came from Mars.
And remember, your one you read on just last time, it was Martians, suspiciously light people and everything. They could not speak.
Nope.
They could only speak through signs. These guys can speak, but it's a different language. Those Martians looked all tall and wimbly-bimbly, not quite human. These ones look fully human. In fact, they're a perfect, beautiful woman. You know, golden hair. And,
maybe medium size.
Butt-ass naked too. Yeah. And this man is a picture of masculinity. So they seem to have developed the ability to look like people and sound like people, whereas their first attempt wasn't quite right. Something was still off a little bit, but something's still off a little bit now is what I mean. Actually, is that they can't speak English, and they can't wear clothes.
Their clothes were off.
Yeah. Well, they also thought that this cold April morning was
balmy,
too hot, and they
Yeah.
were fanning themselves.
It definitely was. It was one
it was
hot
and steamy,
morning.
all right.
Oh yeah. I want to know what they did on that couch. But
God.
it I don't know. That's a pretty good story. Really, I mean, are you gonna top that one? Like,
Well, I mean, I wanted to say that we've got the element of Mars showing up. We've got the ship can move very fast. We've got the polished metals, the new technology. Something being just a little bit off about the people on board. So I think I can top this one. The next one is... Damn it, my window. There it is. This one is from April 19 in 1897 from the Dallas Morning News, from an article called "A Judge Sees It," which is referencing a guy named Judge Love. And he tells of a conversation with an airship crew he came across while on a fishing trip. The judge offered a common description of the craft, adding it was capable of a speed of 250 miles an hour, before recounting what he was told by the 5 peculiarly dressed men. So here is a quote from the article of what the pilots told him. "We live in the regions of the North Pole. Contrary to the general belief, there is a large body of land beyond the polar seas, containing about 250 square miles of territory. The first time this land was visited by human beings, so far as we know, was when the 10 tribes of Israel found their way there after the captivity and dispersion of the Jews.
That's where they went.
According to tradition, they were attempting to cross the Bering Straits and were carried by a floating iceberg and landed on the shores of North Pole Land. The climate there, while at that time cold, was prevented from being uninhabitable by the influence of the Gulf Stream, which, after flowing for hundreds of miles, many fathoms under the surface of the sea in that region, came to the surface and flows entirely around the continent of North Pole Land. You wonder how I speak English. Well, the polar expedition of Sir Hugh Willoughby in 1553, who with his crew was supposed to have been lost, as a matter of fact succeeded in reaching North Pole Land. The ship had been so wrecked and broken up by the voyage that Sir Willoughby and his crew were unwilling to risk a return trip. Therefore, they remained at North Pole Land. In the early part of 1846, Sir John Franklin's crew reached North Pole Land, Sir John having died near what is now called Lady Franklin Bay. Sir John's crew remained as to return was impossible, the ship being crushed between 2 icebergs 100 miles from North Pole Land, to which they went in boats. In addition to the foregoing, various parties in the United States and Europe from time to time reached this land in a helpless condition. Well, we have a splendid country now. You know how buildings are heated by steam? Well, we have pipes through which steam is conveyed all over the inhabitable part of the country, and the soil is kept at such a temperature that we can produce all the fruits of the temperate zone and some of the fruits of the tropics. The country is lighted by electricity during the 6 months of night. We have no timber and no coal. Water, as you know, is composed of 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen. The oxygen burns very rapidly, giving out great heat. Now, by means of a chemical process, we take an iceberg, separate the hydrogen from the oxygen, and use the latter for fuel and lights. For lack of timber, we cannot build ships or trains. Therefore, we were led to the invention of the airship. What do you think of that one? That one we have improvement, so it's a couple days later, right? No, April 19th. So it's the same day as the golden-haired girls,
yeah.
But we have a development now. These guys can speak English They learned English, and they can talk to this guy. They tell of where they're from, and it's a completely fantastical land, North Pole
Incredibly
land.
fantastical. No, I mean, here's the thing. All right, so, and this is what I got hung up on, which just shows how my brain works. But these are extremely advanced. I mean, they've got a very good society. They've got pipes pumping hot water around. They're able to split things at an atomic level, and all of that. But they can't come up with a better name than North Pole Land.
For real. And supposedly they're descended from like some of the, what is there, like 10 lost tribes of Israel, right? And
Yeah.
so you couldn't have even like grabbed like a Yiddish dictionary and grabbed like a Yiddish word to throw in there instead of just throwing North Pole Land at us.
The Aramaic or something. I mean,
Yeah.
So yeah, North Pole Land. I mean, to me, when I think of that, I think of like, I don't know, what's north of Poland?
Estonia.
So, I don't know, North Pole Land. That's what I'm
Yeah.
hung up on. This is where it loses all credibility to me, is because the guy's like, he's writing this fantastical letter about this amazing race of just extremely civilized people. And he goes, shit, what do I call where they're from? Fuck it, North Pole Land.
Fuck it.
And that's
Yeah.
that's what he writes down.
Well, this guy that is telling this, fucking, what's his name, Judge Willoughby or whatever it was? Hold on.
No, Judge Love, which honestly I believe he should have been the
Judge
name of the
Love,
guy
yeah.
that wrote the other story. But, that's just me.
Yeah, for real. So this guy, Judge Love, I guess he was a dude, and he saw this thing and reported what he saw. So I'm giving him a little credit. I mean, he could have made it up, but I mean, he's making it up from something. He saw something, and he's filling in the details from how his psyche is working. So he's making those connections, and those connections are matching up. Well, we need a population. Okay, well, the 10 tribes of Israel disappeared, right? And then, we need a location. Okay, North Pole. This place has a very, I don't know if you ever watched that kids movie Golden Compass with all those like flying airships and everything. Shit,
Is
dude.
that what this movie is based off of? I mean,
Well, no, but if this story that this guy put in the newspaper had happened more recently, I would suggest that he was basing his story off this movie, because you got these there's like a civilization in the North Pole with all of these airships, and they're hunting for magic. They're looking for real life magic and all of this stuff. It's kind of a fun movie. But anyways, my point is that's what comes to mind, because it's this tale of this like awesome
North
utopic
Pole
society that's up in North Pole Land. And
That's
I
what
mean,
they
we
got a
know
bunch
there's
of-
no land. There's no. It's all ice. There's no continent in the North Pole. You
Yeah.
know,
so they make all their money off of exporting,
airships.
toys to little boys and little girls around the world. I mean,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
So are
But yeah,
we
airships,
saying
okay.
that maybe this is coming out of this man's Santa Claus and elves fantasy?
Quite possibly. There's a couple of other things that I take a little bit of concern with the story as well, saying that they were crossing the Bering Strait and got caught in the Gulf Stream.
I know it doesn't go through there.
Like the Gulf Stream is in a completely different ocean on the other side of the world, and doesn't even go up into past the Arctic Circle.
I know.
It pushes up towards the coast of Ireland and England instead, which keeps Ireland and England fairly temperate year round. So, it is nowhere near the Bering Sea. Now, I don't know much about Pacific Ocean currents if they have something that's kind of similar. So maybe, I don't know, you just didn't know what to call it, kind of like North Pole land.
Right? Yeah.
But I don't know. That one, I'm sorry.
But
I'm
here
striking that one
here
off the
we've got
books.
another thing where the guy saw something and he needed to fill in what it was that he saw so that it made sense to him. And his psyche began making these connections. Okay, we need a population. Okay, the lost tribes of Israel. Okay, we need a location, North Pole. Okay, we need a thing. So there's a phenomenon that's being seen. There's something there. I mean, we don't know what it is. Maybe he saw a comet. Maybe he just saw something weird in the woods. Who knows? But
Yeah, he saw something all right.
Then he's backfilling details into there from the current collective unconscious. I mean, it was pretty big in the 1800s to believe that most of the native tribes in the North American continent were lost tribes of Israel. So, I mean, that was floating around in the collective at the time and available for him to just grasp and tag onto this thing. They hadn't been associated with airships before, that's for sure. But, yeah, it's very interesting to me to see this kind of development as we go. We're getting more human. Now they speak English and look like people and associate themselves with very much real humans from this earth, the 10 tribes of Israel, not Martians, not aliens, although they're from a weird part of the earth, the North Pole, which nobody
North
can
Pole
get
land.
to.
Very, very, not very established area.
Yeah,
But
which doesn't
since
even actually have any land.
you're making these steps forward, it reminded me of a story that I'd come across actually on the Wikipedia article about all this, because believe it or not, there is one.
Okay.
And hopefully this isn't one that you were going to touch on, but this is a step backwards, a very, very, very far step backwards from what you've been bringing us already. So this is also on the same day, April 19th, 1897. And this was an account by Alexander Hamilton. No, not that one. In Leroy, Kansas. Hamilton and his son and a hired hand witnessed an airship hovering over his cattle pen. And upon closer examination, the witnesses realized that a red cable from the airship had lassoed a heifer, but had also become entangled in the pen's fence. And after trying unsuccessfully to free the heifer, Hamilton cut loose a portion of the fence, then stood in amazement to see the ship, cow, and all rise slowly and sail off. Some have suggested this was the earliest report of cattle mutilation. In 1977, however, UFO researcher Jerome Clark debunked this story and confirmed via interviews and Hamilton's own affidavit that the story was a successful attempt to win a Liars Club competition to create the most outlandish tall tale. So this guy, he didn't have quite the imagination of all the rest of these people that we've mentioned so far. But to me, his story seems the most credible, even though he came out and said he was lying about it. It seems the most credible because that does sound like something that aliens do. So, they're going to come down and steal your cows. And then they're going to drop them in a field somewhere, missing their genitalia and brains. So, yeah. So that seems the most credible. And this guy was lying about it. All these other people are going out there and they're like, oh, yeah, this is what I saw. I saw these two sexy people frolicking around in the grass, picking flowers and laughing. And I, walked up on them and tried to get in the middle of it. And, and people eat it up. They eat that shit up. Because the fantastical stories are what people want to hear. They didn't have a whole lot of entertainment at this point. So, to me, this guy's little cow stealing story, I bet it did actually happen. It just wasn't as cool as everybody else's story. So he's like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I fucking lied.
Never mind. I made it up. Yeah. He
Everybody else out there
read
has way
that one
cooler
by
stories.
dude with the naked aliens, and he was like, I can't even top that. Nobody's going to care about this story.
Right, I can't even compete. They stole one of my cows, for Christ's sake. And they just made off with it at the slowest rate of speed possible, and I just couldn't catch them.
Yeah, they didn't even buzz off at 150 miles an hour. That was
No,
that one
they
didn't mention
couldn't.
it.
If they would have been over 55 miles an hour, they might as well just leave the cow behind. It's just going to disintegrate.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
So speaking of disintegrating, here is an article from April 22 in
we're
Texas.
moving forward in time a little bit, finally.
Yeah, just a couple of days, though. 3 days after the last one. Okay, the mystery man of the Statesman, that's the name of the newspaper, heard yesterday that Mr. R.H. Cousins had caught a glimpse of the mysterious ship Friday night, and Mr. Cousins was seen about it. Here's a quote. "No, I saw no ship," he said. "I stepped out into my yard, and my attention was attracted by a moving light, which appeared to be some distance above the earth, not far from the residence of Mr. J.W. Graham. I at first thought it was a meteor, but I soon discovered it moved too slow to be a meteor. The light was not very large. I think possibly I could have covered it with my hand. I watched it as it moved, and it passed over and down in the direction of Shoal Creek. I saw no dark object nor anything that resembled a ship. I saw nothing but the light, and at the same time thought nothing about it." That's the end of his quote. The story, as reported, was that Mr. Cousins had seen a large ship-like shape with the light attached to it. To the Stateman's gang last night, the mystery man, to the utter consternation of the boys, gave it as his unalterable opinion that there was something in this airship business. Here's another quote. "Where there's so much smoke, there must be some fire," he said. "So many reports from so many different points cannot be fabrications. People may say what they will, but there's something in it." The gang was visibly moved. "It is my opinion," continued the mystery man, "that the airship, so-called, is nothing more or less than a reconnoitering aerial war car from warlike Mars, investigating the conditions of the United States to see what reinforcements we'll need when the country is invaded by the allied armies of Europe. The Mars soldiers having no confidence whatsoever in the American Jingos as real fighters." What is a Jingo?
Sounds like some sort of racist thing.
Oh, is it?
I don't know.
Well, we'll bleep that out then. "With these soldiers of Mars cavorting around over our heads, do you think there is any danger to us of the Earth?" asked the gang in concert. "I most emphatically do. Last Thursday night, one of their aerial boats exploded, and the scraps of steel and pieces of electric wire were found on a schoolhouse, the roof of which workmen were repairing. They heard the explosion during the night, and just before it took place, the aerial vehicle was seen sailing through the air. There is great danger in venturing out these nights. What if one of those fellows from Mars should tumble out and fall on you?" The city editor and telegraph man were profoundly impressed, and last night they slept under a table in their editorial rooms.
Oh. Duck and cover.
Here now we've got some more. We've got Mars. We've got the speed thing, and now we have a crash. So we have evidence of it on the ground. It's not there's not a body, but a body falling out is mentioned. So now, if you have what am I? So you might have a article where someone talks about a body falling out, and it's already circulating around in the collective unconscious at this point. It's been put in a paper. It's been published. People are reading it. Associations with Mars, associations with crashes. What if a body falls out? The legend is growing.
It is. And that kind of leads us, because that one was in Texas, yeah?
Yeah.
So people are going to read something to their local area.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of leads us to the Aurora incident, which I'm gonna touch on here. And this happened, reportedly occurred on April 17th of 1897. So, around about, what would that would be 5 days before this last one.
Okay.
So, I mean, but it's reportedly. So it could be later on than that. But there is a newspaper article about this, and it's called "A Windmill Demolishes It." And this I see how our escalation of our collective conscious at this time is leading up to this story. So in Aurora, Wise County, Texas, April 17th, to the news. About 6 o'clock this morning, the early risers of Aurora were astonished at the sudden appearance of the airship, which has been sailing through the country. It was traveling due north and much nearer to the earth than ever before. Evidently, some of the machinery was out of order, for it was making a speed of only 10 or 12 miles an hour. Riveting. Like, just not riveting, but blazing speeds. So a speed of only 10 or 12 miles an hour and gradually settling toward the earth. It sailed directly over the public square, and when it reached the north part of town, collided with the tower of Judge Proctor's windmill and went to pieces with a terrific explosion, scattering debris over several acres of ground, wrecking the windmill and water tank and destroying the judge's flower garden. Aw. The pilot of the ship is supposed to have been the only one on board, and while his remains are badly disfigured, enough of the original has been picked up to show that he was not an inhabitant of this world. Mr. T.J. Weems, the United States Signal Service officer at this place and an authority on astronomy, gives it as his opinion that he was a native of the planet Mars. Papers found on his person, evidently the record of his travels, are written in some unknown hieroglyphics and cannot be deciphered. The ship was too badly wrecked to form any conclusion as to its construction or motive power. It was built of an unknown metal resembling somewhat a mixture of aluminum and silver, and it must have weighed several tons. The town is full of people today who are viewing the wreck and gathering specimens of the strange metal from the debris. The pilot's funeral will take place at noon tomorrow. So, yeah. So they kind of took that other story, but they added the body to it. So they had a body, and they were going to bury it.
This actually comes before that other story, so I'm actually going to take back what I was saying about
it's
April 22
reportedly.
story I just read, maybe informing this story, and I'm going to say maybe this story informed the April 22 story. Maybe not directly, but at least, it's on the mind.
Now we got the damn things blowing up.
Yeah.
They're running into windmills, and they're blowing up. They're getting shredded to pieces at 10 miles an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're throwing...
Where is
burnt
this
bodies on the
150,
ground.
250 miles an hour speed at now?
Yeah, I know. Okay, how fast was this windmill spinning? That's what I want to know. It's like helicopter blades, and you throw a potato through it. And it's just
my God.
So
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know. And this man's poor flower garden, it was destroyed.
Yeah, that was a weird detail to add.
Yeah, so it took out his windmill. It took out his water tower and destroyed his flower garden. Nothing else. That was it. But they're saying it likely weighed several
between
tons.
the iron rod letter story and the golden-haired girl's story. So we've still got an issue that the pilot doesn't look like he's from this world, and those golden-haired girls were aliens, but at least looked human. But previously, the aliens, the Mars aliens from last episode, looked like big old tall grays that were super light.
You could
So
pick
we
them up by
have the
sticking a
same
finger up their
doesn't
butthole.
look like a person. We have the same. They can't seem to manage language. All of the written material on the ship, the captain's log, so to speak, is in some weird hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
But we do have the weird metal. Remember the golden-haired girls one? It was polished aluminum. The ship was polished aluminum.
So this was aluminum silver alloy, I guess is what they're calling it on this one. And we've also reached a point where they are unable to manage their craft. And we're starting to see
Even
this
at
is
10
becoming,
miles an hour.
Yeah. So this is becoming a problem as well. They're starting. Okay, not only are people seeing these all over the country, now they're seeing them just blowing up all over the country too. Because this happened in Michigan as well. You were actually onto something with this, with your Michigan story of the last time, and I think you might have been talking about this possible one here, because on April 10th, so we're going back just a little bit further, and April 10th, 1897, in Alma, Michigan, there was a sighting of an airship there, and this sparked off a whole bunch of sightings all over from Benton Harbor, Howland, Niles, and Mendon, all on the next day. And then on April 12th, 2 days later after it was first sighted in Alma, the airship was seen over Battle Creek and Kalamazoo, and then supposedly exploded over Pavilion, with alleged airship debris being found there and in nearby Comstock. So it just up and blew up. And then the next night after that, there was a farmer living north of Battle Creek that claimed that the airship came within 100 feet of a field on their farm, and one of their wheels fell off of it and got stuck in the ground. And then sightings peaked around the 15th and then kind of petered off into May. So that's what we got going on in Michigan. So we got one, they're starting, like, they're either really inept with the building of their craft or piloting it. These things are just randomly blowing up. But why are there, okay, so I can understand, for one, if somebody was to build a dirigible, say, and they're going to use one of those, gases that's not as dense as air. So either hydrogen, helium, the extremely flammable gases that they are. Why would there be so many at once? I can understand somebody building one and putting it out, and that one blows up, all Hindenburg style. But all of a sudden, it's everywhere. Like, there were so many inventors all at once that were just like, hey, let's start flying our airships. All over the United States, all decided to start flying their airships all at the same time, and all started blowing up all at the same time.
Most of the stuff about them at this point is that they're aliens.
Yeah, well, that's because nobody had ever seen an airship before.
They'd seen airship. They had put up the first hot air balloon in the 1700s.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is these people didn't really see them all the time. And that actually brings me up to a good point, because we did talk on the last episode about, was there anything that was possible to be in the sky at this time? Now, it brings me to a man named Solomon Andrews. And Solomon Andrews passed away in October.
Wait. I had a quick comment on that last before we move to the next one.
Go for it.
So that little series of ones that you said, there's a crash, one blows up, then there's one that's like dropping to pieces in the farmer's field, all leading up to the 15th. The 15th of April is when, in Wisconsin, that iron rod was found sticking in the farmer's property. So it makes sense for things to be just falling off of these airships piecemeal.
Oh, okay. Yeah, all right. Okay. That makes sense. So he didn't throw it out. It fell out.
Fell off, yeah.
He didn't have it
with a letter
properly
on it.
Or it blew up and flew over there from wherever the hell it blew up at. Because apparently these things are just dropping out of the sky at this point.
God, yeah.
So
Yeah.
So anyway, we got Solomon Andrews, and he's an inventor that passed away in 1872. So this is long, long before. You're looking at 30 years before, 30, yeah, almost 30 years before.
Mm.
It's like 20 something. I'm not about to do that math right now because I'm tired and it's late at night. But he had claimed that he had built an airship, that he was going to sail as one would sail in a sailboat.
Mm-hmm.
And, it wasn't just a claim. He actually did it. So in 1863, long before all of this was even going on, his first Arion, as he called it, flew over Perth Amboy, New Jersey on June 1st. And this dirigible of his had 3 80-foot cigar-shaped balloons with a rudder and a gondola. Buoyancy was controlled by jettisoning sand ballast or releasing hydrogen lift gas. Somebody had wrote Abraham Lincoln at that time to offer the Arion for use in the Civil War. So we're talking of an airship that actually did fly in the 1860s. That is pretty much what these people are describing, seeing in the sky. Built, flew, was controllable. This guy actually built them, flew them, and everything.
Yeah, this isn't. It doesn't have any wings. It doesn't have any of the steam powered stuff, but it has the 3. We've got cigar shape, although they're balloons, not aluminum. And then we've got a rudder. A rudder is often mentioned in the descriptions of these 1896 and 97 ones. But yeah, go on.
Yeah. So he ended up building a second one, the Arion number 2, as he had called it. And this one was lemon shaped, so more of a balloon shape to it. Mm-hmm. It was sharply pointed at both ends, and it controlled its buoyancy with a system of lines and pulleys that compressed the gas or allowed it to expand. And he flew it over New York City on May 25th of 1866 and on June 5th of 1866. The second trip, he carried a passenger assistant who was a news reporter, but this guy had to be left out at the last minute because he weighed too much. But he flew over New York City and landed at Oyster Bay, Long Island, which unfortunately the post-war economic collapse caused his company to fold, and yeah, so he just kind of gave up on them. But funny, this is the same guy that invented a sewing machine and other neat stuff. He invented the kitchen range, gas lamps, a nicotine filtering pipe.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why you'd want to filter the nicotine out, because that's the whole reason to smoke. But, and he invented a padlock, which the U.S. Post Office still uses.
That's pretty cool.
So this
So
guy
he
invented
actually
some
has
pretty cool
like
stuff.
known patents, basically, is what you're
Yes,
saying?
he didn't get around to patenting his airship, unfortunately, but he is credited as the first guy to actually fly one. And actually, he actually did. There is proof of him doing so, and it was witnessed by many, many people. So he is one of the first people to actually fly and pilot a controllable airship. So, and that is 30 years prior to what we're talking about now.
That
So there is a good
really
chance.
cool, and I fucking love the name Arion.
Arion.
Oh
Yeah.
my god! Isn't
And
there
Arion
an
number
80s, like some sort of like synth metal band or something called Arion?
If there isn't, and if there wasn't, somebody needs to make one now, because the 80s are coming back into style for some unknown reason. So we need to bring back synth pop with the band Arion. It could be 2 guys. One of them can be bald. The other one.
The other one's got to have a lemon-shaped head.
And Oh, lemon heads. But and then they can, they can make their ethereal synth pop music and make it kind of steampunk sounding. You know what? Do that.
Hell yeah.
Somebody out there, take this up. I'm giving you gold right here. Roll with it.
Rolled gold.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what I got about that. So yeah, Solomon Andrews. He's already been up in the sky 30 years prior to what we're seeing, but he didn't explode. all
So it's
over New York City.
definitely there. 30 years. I mean, some of these people reading these articles could literally remember going, "Oh yeah, I'm sure I read about a guy who did this right at the end of the war," or just
Yeah.
totally, definitely that old guy who saw the naked lady could definitely remember the Civil
Yeah, he
War.
was what,
He was
50?
in his 50s.
Yeah, so he would have been easily at an age that was still impressionable enough that it would have stuck with him.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's entirely possible.
Yeah.
And it does kind of lend a little bit of credibility to some of these stories. But the problem I have with it is that there's so many of them.
Yeah.
Like that's why I'm saying there can't be 3,000 different inventors out there at one time on the same day deciding to all launch their dirigibles up into the sky pretty much within the same week and travel around with them. It just doesn't seem likely at all. And I can understand one that was traveling across the country from west to east, and people were just seeing it over the span of a 6-month time frame or something like that. But all within like the same week of each other just seems, I don't know, seems a little unlikely to me. But that's not why we're here. We're not talking about the unlikelihood of it. We're talking about the likelihood, I guess. I don't know.
The unlikelihood.
I don't know. We're just kind of talking about it.
Well, I got one more. Actually, I got one more here. That's pretty short. And this one, it just seems to have fully, by this point, put the entirety of the airship thing in this area to fully human proportions. It's people, they're looking for a patent. I mean, it's like the Iron Rod one 2.0. So we've got April 30. So this is the end of the month. All this crazy stuff that we've been reading has already gone down in the newspaper, and now we're wrapping up the month, and we've got Texas, the airship. Panola County farmer talked with the navigators. So now we have contact with the navigators. To the editor of the Post, seeing so much about the airship in the papers, and this one's hard to read, so forgive me if I make some mistakes, but me on the lookout, and much to my gratification, my vigilance was rewarded, not only in seeing the airship, but also had the pleasure of meeting a party of aerial travelers. About 8 o'clock p.m., I heard my horses, old gentle work stock, snorting, running, and bucking around like a drove of broncos on a regular stampede. On going out to my lot to see what could have alarmed them, I sighted about a quarter of a mile off and seemingly about 300 feet from the earth a very, very brilliant and variegated light coming from southwest and headed northeast, traveling rapidly. It would occasionally make a circle and now and then be redirected down to earth, virtually turning a very dark and cloudy night into day. After hovering around for a few minutes, it gradually descended to an open field nearby. I, by this time, having recognized it as the airship, went directly to the place of landing, and on arrival found the ship of about the same makeup as given by various correspondents. Its crew was composed of 5 men, 3 of whom entertained me, while the other 2 took rubber bags and went for a supply of water at my well 100 yards off. See, very, very basic human things. They need some water, and they have bags to carry it in. They informed me that this was one of the 5 ships they had been traveling the country over recently, and that this individual ship was the same one recently landed near Beaumont in this state, after having traveled pretty well all over the Northeast. They stated that these ships were put up in an interior town in Illinois. They were rather reticent about giving out the information in regards to the ship's manufacturer, etc., since they had not yet secured everything by patent, but stated they would soon be secure in this and expected to establish a factory in St. Louis at an early day, and would at once enter into active competition with the railroads for passenger traffic, especially in transcontinental travel. They stated that they could shorten time from Atlantic to Pacific 2 to 3 days. The ship's crew were careful not to forget earthly things, though, traveling in the heavens. They were well supplied with edibles of all sorts, likewise drinkables, had a good supply of beer and champagne, also had a full supply of musical instruments. The ship was seen by a number of people. The ship was seen by a number of people in this section, and some very amusing scenes took place. A good many of the semi-superstitious thought it had some word I can't read connection with Judgment Day. It passed near a camp meeting being held by the sanctified people, some of whom went into paroxysms of alarm, while others hailed it as a special messenger sent in a divine and providential way to throw light into the minds of their benighted neighbors, who were yet wandering in the darkness of rebellious theories taught by the old school churches. The ship left my farm at 8:30 p.m. bound up St. Louis, so the party told me. Dang, that
Yeah.
That
You knew my
microfilm is getting a little old or something. That was hard.
When you said your research earlier, I just pictured you just sitting there, just spinning the microfilm at the library, But yeah, okay. So that seems pretty likely.
It's
that it
all
could
people,
be.
and he even explains the weird stuff as superstitious religious people going, "Oh, it's Judgment Day,"
Yeah. So you got these people up there, and they bring along all their edibles and their drinkables and their musical instruments.
Well, I mean, with that much edibles, and if you have that much edibles and that much champagne, and you're that crossfaded, you need some musical instruments.
Yeah. So I mean, these were the equivalent to, I guess, what a modern day hippie would be.
Pretty much.
But instead of using a Volkswagen bus, they decided to use a blimp. Which, hey, but yeah, okay. So it doesn't really say how it's powered or why. So I guess they're just at the mercy of the winds. They're not going very fast.
They needed a lot of water, so I'm going to guess that this was another steam one, but it did not give a description.
Or it could be that they were just dehydrated from all the alcohol they had on board, and they needed some water to they were hungover and they needed to make some coffee. I don't know.
Maybe.
Or they needed the water to make their shroom juice. I don't know. For their edibles. It just, I don't know. That one seems the most credible out of all of them so far. It seems highly likely that could have actually happened.
So this one mentions fast speed. They can go from Atlantic to Pacific in 2 or 3 days. That's hella fast, dude. I mean, the train takes a week, right?
Yeah, something like that.
You got human beings that speak English. There's no accent or strange speech mentioned. It's just regular American people. They're working on a patent. They've manufactured it. I mean, this is the wet dream of the Iron Rod story. Except the Iron Rod story didn't have a real pilot. It was just the journal attached to the Iron Rod.
Yeah. Well, he
that fell
blew
in
up
the
before he
yard.
could,
I guess.
get the chance.
Of course, because you keep your ship's log tied to an iron rod in your,
Well,
in your
they
dirigible.
heard about all the other ones blowing up, so they figured it could happen to them. So they wanted it to be, you know, it was his black box.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This guy invented the black box, and that's what he should have gotten the patent for instead of the airship. He invented something that, came to define air travel, air disasters for many, many years after that.
Yeah. But I mean, you can see it. It's like this one is super credible. We've built this thing. We're still waiting on the patent, so we're not going to talk about like trade secrets and stuff. But
Right.
we are planning on revolutionizing travel because we can take people from Atlantic to Pacific in 3 days tops. We got plenty of food on board, so we can obviously carry a lot. We do need to stop for water at random farmers' houses, but hey, there's plenty of farmers between the Atlantic and the Pacific.
And who knows, every now and then they might stop pick up a cow because they want to have a steak dinner.
Or try to
so-
pick up a cow at least.
Yeah, the cow just weighed too much and they just dragged it off. But
Yeah.
you
At
know,
a very
it's-
slow speed.
it's we're starting to get more credible. But what really bothers me about this whole flap is that how quickly it came on is how quickly it disappeared at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about it, you got all these ships out there. You got all these people that are just deciding like, now's the time to be flying in the skies with our dirigibles. And then they just decide to stop. They're like, well, this just ain't working. This ain't for us. Too many of them blew up. They're burying us in unmarked graves in Texas. We're dropping our damn landing gear in Michigan. It's just like it seemed like it was just a really failed attempt.
Not to mention that the Martians keep showing them up with these aluminum and silver craft.
Yeah,
We can't
And
beat
they're-
that. I
they're
mean, we've got this
sexy
steampunk
ways.
brass dirigible, and they're showing up with a polished aluminum
Yeah.
giant phallus.
I mean, and I'm sure there's a joke behind that. It's just like I'm sure they're overcompensating for something, but I guess that pilot wasn't, from the description of him. He was very,
Very well endowed.
very well endowed, majestic manhood, or however it was described. But it just, I don't know, it just like all these stories just kind of taper off by the end of 1897, and you never really hear about it again until like all the other UFO flaps that are going on. There's been a couple of people in the 1930s that wanted to kind of bring it back up into the forefront of the American echelon, but it doesn't go anywhere. Nobody figures out what this is. It falls off into the great void of all the other strange and odd occurrences that have happened over time until we get to 2024 and you got just some odd podcast with 10 monthly listeners talking about it, and here we are. So it's just kind of, why? I think once again, it's leaving us with more questions than answers, and we've accomplished really nothing. We've kind of established that it is possible that it could have been people flying some sort of blimp-like structure around that was new to the time, because we did establish, as with Mr. Solomon Andrews, that these did exist. It was possible. I just don't think
actually,
it's possible
during
in
this
the
time
numbers.
period, there was actually a guy, I can't remember his name. I messaged it to you, but I promptly forgot it. But there was a dude in Sweden or maybe it was Denmark. I don't remember. He was making a dirigible that was going on a mission to the North Pole. And his mission was actually lost until more modern times because his dirigible went down. So the papers actually, quite a few papers I found in my research were reporting on his planned expedition to discover the North Pole by dirigible in Sweden, which connects dirigible, North Pole, expedition, and manufacturing all together in most of these articles. And most of them were little short blurbs, like, Mr. So-and-so is planning to embark in such and such in such and such month in 1897 on his, acclaimed expedition, blah, blah, blah.
It's just, once again, the vast numbers of sightings is what really just kind of takes me off of this. And I think it all comes down to just some sort of viral marketing. And
they had airships on the brain.
Yeah, of the time. I don't think people were really seeing anything. They just wanted to capitalize on the one person that actually did. And I do believe that there was somebody out there, and it comes back down to this whole, monolith thing that was going on a few years back. That there was one guy that flew something, was seen, admitted that he did it, and then everybody else just wanted to capitalize on that, and it gave him a whole bunch of credibility and then took it all away, because all of a sudden everybody else was just jumping on board with it and everybody forgot about the original guy. So we've got a situation of what human beings do best, and that's they're telling stories out there just to get famous, get their 15 minutes of fame, get published in the newspaper.
Definitely, I do want to say brand new stories, because they've reported on seeing wild stuff in the skies before, but never airships.
No. Which, I don't know, kind of leads to our conclusion of this episode. And we're running about an hour and a half here, and we've been rambling a lot, and I don't know about Mike, but my ears are getting kind of tired. So... I don't know. Do we continue this? Is there more to talk about? Do we go further back in time?
We could go, we could go further back in time. There's quite a bunch of stuff I found that goes all the way back into antiquity on this, with weird sightings in the sky. There's,
we've talked
I got
about
a couple more stories about, they're more like tall tales, like, what's his name, Captain Bulltop Stormalong style tales that come out of this airship flap. I found stuff a little older than this, like the 1850s or 60s, I think, about a flying canoe seen in Canadian skies.
Of course, it's Canada.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and bring this back for another episode. Let's do a 3-parter on this. Why not? I've been having a lot of fun with this, and I know you have as well, and I hope everybody else out there has been enjoying this as much as we have, because I don't know, this is fascinating. Just it's not just the possibility of what people could be seeing, but it's these stories are fun. Like, I don't care who you are. These stories are fun. I mean, these people are coming up with some crazy ideas. They're just not very good names for stuff, but they're coming up with some good ideas. And, and the salacious sexual ramblings of some nudist wannabe man in St. Louis to, some guy coming up with people traveling in the Gulf Stream through the Bering Strait. Mm-hmm. It's amazing shit that, would just be just scoffed at these days. Can you imagine if Facebook had been around back at this time? The shit that would have been spewed onto the internet, it would have been priceless. I wish we could have some sort of look into everyday culture back then, but this kind of gives us that, and I like that. But yeah, so I think we're going to close it on that, and we're going to come back with third part to this, and we're going to go dive in a little bit deeper into the human psyche of UFO evolution, and talk a little bit more on that in our third episode, which on this topic, it's not our third episode, but I think we got like 11 or 12 now. I'm not sure. All good episodes, and if this is the one that you're starting on, damn it, go back to the beginning.
What are you doing? Go
Yeah,
at least listen to
you
part
know,
1 of this one.
Yeah, listen to the part 1. What the hell's wrong with you?
Wait, why are we
but,
telling them at the end of part 2?
Yeah, good point. You know what? Yeah, it's your mistake. Way to go. You fucked up. But yeah, and if you want to check us out, we're on Instagram, Bermuda Boys Pod. You can go check us out there. If you want to send us an email, bermudaboyspod@gmail.com. If you go on our Instagram, you can find all our links there to everything. Yeah, just drop us a line, and if you want to be a guest on the show, hit me up or hit Mike up. Depends on which one you want to interact with more. I'm sure he'd be willing to receive your salacious emails about naked women and naked men that are well endowed, frolicking around picking flowers. He would
They gotta have
absolutely
fans,
love
though.
that. Yeah, well, only fans. But yeah, thanks for joining us and on this wild, very slow ride through the airs of the United States in the 1890s. So
We got two speeds, 150 miles an hour or 10 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And you're more
Rip
likely
your
to
face
crash
to
and
pieces.
burn at 10 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah, well, if you're going to hit that windmill that's spinning at 1,000 miles an hour and just obliterates your entire ship.
Like hitting
yeah.
a jet engine.
Like a bird.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for joining us. And Mike, as usual, thanks for being on.
Oh, you
But
bet.
yeah, I'm Jack.
And I'm Mike.
And this has been the Bermuda Boys. Come on back. I don't know how to. You know what? Good night. Good day. Just fucking come back and listen to the next one. Jesus Christ. I don't know how to end episodes. I'm terrible at it. We'll see y'all later.